They stood up. Trained them. You said, boy, that will take a whole lot of time. Yes. Yes. You see, one of the great problems in America is we want it all. The problem is you can't have it all. I sit out there and, I start working on something outside, building something, building a piece of furniture. I could build furniture a lot faster before Ian came along. Because I can put his hand on that rubber mallet and I can drive in the peg of wood I'm going to use to make it look like very old furniture. And it does take a long time. But now, am I in this just to make furniture? Or am I in this to teach a boy how to build a cabinet? You see, it's not just teaching. It's also illustrating. Not just illustrating, it is training. Now, if you look at this, most children get very little, if not any, moral teaching from their parents until they've already messed up. And then the moral teaching always comes because they got in trouble. So they equate moral teaching with trouble. So we have failure to teach, train, illustrate. Another is a lack of discipline. A lack of discipline. My little boy's a wild man. He gets a lot of spankings. When we came here and you have an Awanas, someone said, just in passing, they said, why don't you put your boy in Awanas? I said, because no one back there will spank him. And Will goes, I'll spank him. I said, will you spank him? Yeah, I'll spank him. You want spanked? I'll spank him. I talked to him for a minute. Okay, he can go in Awanas. You say, he touches my son and I'll... Yeah, I know. Yeah, let's talk about that. And a biblical man, I talked to him, found out about his testimony, his integrity among the workers and the children and everything else. I say, this little boy gets out of line, you spank him. Because then he's going to learn what? That there are a lot of different manifestations of authority in the world. Not just my father. And I need to obey my elders, even if they're not my dad. You say, I've never heard of such a thing. I know. But if I'm here for the next couple of months, you're going to hear this a lot. That's the thing. You've got to understand that we have got to discipline. Now, discipline is not just spanking. Some people spank and do all sorts of things and they're abusive. That's not what I'm talking about. But let me point some things out to you that are very, very important. First of all, your child will become bitter if there are no parameters set for your child. He'll become bitter. They'll become confused. They won't know if they're ever safe. Think about it. If I'm standing in the middle of the jungle or I'm wading through a black swamp in Akocha on the Amazon and I don't know anything about this whole deal, I don't know if I'm safe or not. I could be as safe as a baby. I could be in great danger unless someone tells me, Paul, you get in that water, the alligator's going to eat you. Or, yes, you can get in that water and it'll be all right. If someone doesn't set parameters for me, I never know if I'm safe. I never know where I'm at. I never know really what to do. And so you must set parameters for your children. That is very, very important, is to instruct them in parameters. If you do not, they'll never know that there are moral certainties in the world. And there are. And then, if there are not consistent consequences for violating those parameters, this is what they'll learn. I can get away with it sometimes. And the chance is worth it. Let me give you an example. You tell your child, now, son, that vase over there belongs to your mother. You're not to touch that vase. Do not touch the vase. Now you say, well, why don't you just remove the vase? Then you stop the problem. No, you don't. You hide it. You child-proof your house, you ought to house-proof your child. You tell him, don't touch that vase. You walk out of the room, you come back in, he's touching the vase. You've told him, if you touch the vase, I'm going to spank you. But you go out, come back in, he's touching the vase. And you said, what did I tell you? Don't touch the vase. Don't do it again. You lied. You lied. You did not do what you said you were going to do. And the child has learned, hey, man, this authority thing isn't so bad. Because it's just basically empty warnings. And that's all. Or you come back in and you go, what did I tell? 1, 2, 3. How many of you have done that? Now what you're telling them is consequences may come, but they will be delayed. And if you can move fast enough, you can get out of them. Then 20 years down the road, when they've got to make a decision about whether they're going to obey the law or not, these things start coming into mind. I can get away with this. There are no moral certainties. On and on and on. Discipline is extremely important. But the right kind, a loving kind, a biblical kind. And we'll talk about that later. Let me say another reason that children become embittered. Verbal and physical abuse. Physical abuse ought to be reported. It ought to be taken to the law. It should not be tolerated in any society. I think we all could agree on that. But there's something else that goes on that is just as harmful as physical abuse. Maybe not to the body, but in the long run, even more to the soul. And that is verbal abuse. And what happens? Most parents will not set parameters, and if they do, they will not discipline for those parameters. And the child begins to just wreak havoc. As the child wreaks havoc, the parent becomes more angry and more angry and more angry to the point where the parent does no longer even like the child. And begins to attack. What's wrong with you? What? Don't you hear? Were you deaf? Man! And then every time the child begins to enter into a relationship with the parent, it's always one of bitterness and anger instead of joy and love and everything else that it ought to be there. Can you see why we drive such a wedge? It's not a mystery. Verbal abuse. If your child breaks a law of the house, it should not be running over there, oh, you idiot, what have you done? The parents should be always joyful, at peace. Son, what did I tell you? Dad, you said don't touch that. What did you do? Touched it. Son, I love you very, very much, and I think that one day you're going to be a great man. You must learn that there are authorities, and you must learn that there are consequences. Enough to sting. Enough to get the point across. And then, son, do you have anything to say? Dad, I'm sorry. Would you like to pray about it? You know, when you disobeyed me, son, you disobeyed the Lord. Okay. Lord, forgive me. Son, He forgave you. Dad, forgive me. Oh, son, I forgive you. And I love you so much. I love you so much. You are worth all the investment I could ever make in you, son. I love you. It's over. No more, hey, do you remember what you did yesterday? You did that again? No, it's all over. Just like our Father wipes away all our sin. It's all over. No yelling, no screaming. I go into some houses and it's like, I'm in a lunatic shop or something.